This founder is leading a nonprofit organization that provides immediate support for survivors of domestic violence and abuse while cultivating a culture of care and stability for the people behind the work. Now, the question is, will she walk away with the $5,000 at the end? I don't know. You decide. My name is Cynthia Mwansa.
I'm Wangari Moringa.
I'm Gary Barquette.
And this is Open Invited.
Hello, my name is Katya Wojcik. I am the co-founder and executive director of Project Be Free. Project Be Free is headquartered in Renton, Washington, and we support the community when they are experiencing domestic violence crisis. And really, it is the spectrum of violence. It's from prevention work with youth to work through someone's crisis alongside officers, and it is providing assistance to someone's well-being after abuse through counseling and support groups. Today, I'm here to talk to you about not something that is new and not something that is newly created. It's important to understand that as a leader, it's important that we want to sustain things that are working. So I'm not here to pitch something brand new. I'm here to actually talk about sustaining my team's wellness. It is something that is very important to me. And through that wellness, I'm asking the panel and the community for $5,000. For this $5,000, we are going to be able to provide wellness services to my team. What that's going to look like is yoga services, that's going to look like sound baths, and that's going to look like being able to provide a service through the environment that is extremely important to cultivate a sense of team.
Well, thank you, Katya. Welcome. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Good, good. Well, you shared a lot about the work that you all do with Project Be Free. And, I know that one of the foundational questions that all of us have, especially for or given the nature of the work that you do, is really how you even got started to begin with. So tell us a little bit more about your foundations.
Yeah, so Project Be Free was started right in the height of the pandemic. It was a time that was, as we know, very difficult. It was a time where we lacked community and a time where we thought it was unsafe to be around others. And unfortunately, that contributed to a really contentious time in many of our families. And unfortunately, during the pandemic, domestic violence rates went up exponentially. And that was really a time that while I was working in the nonprofit sector in another organization, I felt really called to action. At the time, my partner was in law enforcement, and he saw many instances also that officers were responding to an increased call rate and also how that was wearing on officers' well-being. So we came together much in my living room, which is kind of odd to think about, and really created something that we thought was lacking in our community to be able to close a gap.
When I think about domestic violence, I think about how there's a lot of people who don't think about it until it becomes a thing, right? Like not as proactive about it or knowing what outlets to go to when they do start experiencing it. The word immediate was brought up, like immediate service or immediate attention, and that stuck out to me. So I wanted to ask you kind of what does that look like or what does that mean, like immediate service, and why is that important?
Yeah, I will say a big reason for this ask and making sure that my staff is having their well-being intact is that we are an organization that is not sleeping. We are oftentimes supporting community 24/7. We don't have any blackout dates. We're working through the holidays, which is oftentimes even more a contentious time. And we are also working through the night and on weekends. The court systems are often closed, and people need to be able to have support and immediate services during those times of fear. When building the team, it was really important to me to think about how I could do that intentionally. So the team right now speaks a total of 23 languages. Wow. And it's important for me, well, we're thinking to look into expansion and also remaining intact in what we have, is really mirroring the community and what their cultural needs are, whether that's religion, whether that is language, whether that is just life experience. Many of our team members are survivors themselves, and that's why they show up so fiercely for this work. And unfortunately, there are instances that they can become triggered and their wellness can be at stake. So it's important for me to be able to be 4 steps ahead of our team, to be able to foreshadow and see some of those things. And that's why this wellness fund is so important.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I'm glad you were able to talk about what the $5,000 would be used for very early in your introduction, because now we kind of know how to ask more questions, because specifically pertaining to that, what does that look like? Like yoga, you're talking about, and it's all mental health services and stuff that are very important. So I just kind of want you to walk me through, say, if somebody had a call, right? It's immediate service, they are traumatized. How would they go about getting the help that they need? Would it be that day? Would it be something that's scheduled out further? Kind of
Yeah,
walk us through that.
great question.
Mm-hmm.
So one of our programs that we're actually known for the most is our co-responder program. It's a domestic violence co-responder program where we are alongside 4 police departments currently.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever a family or individual calls within those cities, when officers are heading out to that scene, we are then dispatched as well by them.
Got it.
I will mention we're not dispatched by 911. Our program is really solidified on a foundation of trust and rapport with our
Wow.
officers. So I say this very firmly that we are invited out to be alongside them and to be a team member alongside them. And I think the reason it was meant to be that way is because this is really being able to repair oftentimes fear of law enforcement. In many cultures and many instances, they don't have the opportunity to have those really vulnerable questions or answered, as
Yeah.
well as be able to speak in their native language. And that's why it's so important for us to be able to have those tools when we show up on scene. Ways that people get connected to us is officers just know they're going to connect them to us. 2 of our cities right now have it written in policy that any DV call, whether it is a prevention DV call, whether it is a verbal dispute, whether it is neighbors that are fighting each other, we will be dispatched out. I also mention this because it's important to understand that Project Be Free really serves the spectrum of domestic violence. And that's not solely intimate partner violence, which is what most organizations are funded for. We're really looking at domestic violence prevention and work. We're really looking at family to be able to support the community in that way, and really looking at what the gaps are in the community that is needing it, because we know that domestic violence is so complex. It doesn't fit into a box, and in many instances, it is hard to tell who's the abuser and who is the responder, and it can be so complicated, especially in such a layered experience.
Yeah, just to follow up on what you're saying, I mean, I worked in healthcare and I've done that for many years, and I just know how taxing it is when you don't have enough team members to cover all the shifts. People are working overtime. So, what does your team look like right now, and what ideally would it look like to have like the perfect team where everybody's getting the breaks that they need and everybody's taken care of?
Yeah. I will say that changes season to season. We just came out of a really tough time in April. We know amongst the organization that when April rolls around that we're going to have really high DV rates, unfortunately.
Why is that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it, unfortunately, like by trade, I'm a mental health therapist, so I think about people's seasonal depression. I think about also the cadence of people thinking about school being let out soon and their kids returning home. I also think about the economy that we're in, unfortunately, right? So many of the calls that we respond to alongside officers have been instances where conflict has arisen because of income or lack of income, or having to double up with parents that are trying to impose rules to now adult children. And that's where a lot of times we are called out for those type of instances.
Gotcha. And then, sorry, just to follow up, what does your team look like? And then what does the ideal team look like for you?
I think that the ideal team for myself is diverse, and also a team that is transparent in the services that we are able to provide, and also in transparency in how we communicate with one another. Something that's been really important, and I try to model to the team, is that there are moments that we're going to be triggered and we can't be the right fit for every situation just because of our own stories. And I wholeheartedly believe that another team member can step in if that's not the right fit for you. So I've been able to tell my team, hey, if you need a break, if you need time to walk around the block, if you need to take the next couple of hours off and someone else will step in, that is respected and understood. And thankfully, I'll say the culture in the organization is such that if something has happened and they need to tap out for the moment, they will lean on their team members. And that's why it's so important for me to be able to model this behavior, because I don't want anyone to be able to feel that they are forced to show up to something just because it is an important experience.
That makes sense. Thank you.
No, thank you for that. That's really good insight. And I think about what it takes to lead a diverse team, right? Because you have various lived experiences, our own journeys, our own traumas, you name it, right? And with that, I'm curious about how you even take care of yourself, right? And how that is reflected in turn in how that trickles down to your actual team members. So how are you taking care of your wellness first, and then thinking about your folks?
Yeah. I'll be honest, this is such a journey still for myself, and looking at what that's supposed to look like. I try to model behavior that is understandably being able to like lean on my team also and say like, hey, I might need a moment, or I'm having a tough day. But as a leader, sometimes it is kind of an isolating experience, because as you're leading or steering the ship, you don't want to worry the team if you're not feeling your best. But I will say that there are leadership that are around me that I'm able to also lean on in other organizations, as well as I will say my law enforcement partnership I've grown very close to, and we have a lot of dark humor and a lot of lightheartedness. So I will say, in something that is so heavy as like working in the DV space, you need to be able to have those lighthearted moments. And laughter is such an experience to exchange and have with others, especially those team members you have. And I have my own mental health therapist. I have my own leadership coach that I talk to oftentimes. It just being able to diversify my own portfolio, so to say, of leadership that is around me and supporting me, and being able to have really real, raw conversations with my team members at times. Like, it's important to me when thinking about moving into a new city that I speak to people's potential anxiety and be able to say like, hey, this is coming, this is what we might be seeing, and I want to foreshadow that for the team, because I don't want to set anybody up as far as is doing good work. And I think a lot of that has cultivated the ability in just 6 years, an organization being so young, to be able to be where we are, truthfully. Last year we supported a law passing, and that was
Come on.
It was just something that was beyond what I could have thought about. And to also be just so respected by community members. And what really has impacted me in this last couple of weeks is just being able to see such beautiful feedback that we're hearing from community members and law enforcement and policymakers, that really makes this work worthwhile and does help balance things out.
One thing I think is important is for people to truly understand how your services work, right? And the step-by-step that goes with that. So could you talk us through your co-responder program, and if someone was experiencing DV, how would they go about, reaching out, or what would that process look like?
Of course. So under our umbrella, we have a couple of various programs. So we have our domestic violence advocacy program, which is open to anyone in the county. They can call in and they can get services such as help with court orders. They can get connected to our support group. They can talk to an advocate. They can also be able to join one of our support groups or get free counseling services. Really, what's important to Project Be Free is like thinking about the naming of our organization. A project is really what it is that is intentional to each person. So us as an organization don't want to dictate what that looks like. We want to be meaningful and intentional when someone comes to us and says, hey, I have all of this stuff, I don't know where to start. That we can walk alongside people, not in front of them, because we might be the professional in that space, but we're not the professional in their lives. And we also don't want to walk behind them. We want to be able to walk alongside them and be their team member in that time of need. We also have our domestic violence co-responder program. As mentioned, we are alongside 4 police departments, soon to be probably 5 and 6 later this summer. And in that program, officers themselves are the ones that call us out. Really, it's important to be intentional about safety. I will say that domestic violence calls, unfortunately, are the most highly lethal instances that officers can show up to. And unfortunately, we've seen that in King County and surrounding counties just in the last couple of weeks. There can be a lot of lethality, and I want to make sure that my team is safe that are showing up and responding to these calls. So that's why it's so important that officers call us when scenes are safe, or they make referrals that way, in order to make sure that we're preventing something from happening in the future. Outside of that, we can help people by getting them into hotels when officers connect us to them. We are doing a lot of like highly sensitive building, I would say, with individuals. And really the truth part to make this all happen and for it to flow is that we have to build rapport with people so quickly, right? Because as we think about the domestic violence cycle, is like someone's in their crisis, and if they've been in that situation for such a long time, they can return to that crisis or that situation because it's known and it's familiar. That's why it's important for our services to be 24/7. So we know that a lot of domestic violence instances are going to happen at the wee hours when people are perhaps intoxicated or they are coming home from a late night shift. So it's important for us to be readily available for that experience. Outside of that, we do a lot of prevention work. We work with youth, and we're on site at the Kent Y, and we are teaching youth life skills and healthy relationships, and oftentimes experiences that we might not be talking about in our nuclear families. I think about my own family, and I mean, I never got a conversation from my mom or dad about what a healthy relationship is supposed to look like. And then we're off to the world and we just kind of gravitate towards things that feel familiar or maybe not familiar. And it's important that us as a community is really thinking about solutions to domestic violence, because oftentimes we think about the solution as maybe law enforcement or the court system or that family. But really, it's up to our communities to come together because these instances are so layered and complex.
Yeah. And in the context of you all's work is very much layered, right? Because what I hear you saying is you provide as well as you all can, right? As holistic support, for individuals experiencing domestic violence. And in that, I can only imagine what that organizational budget looks like, right? Because we have to talk about the numbers. This work is expensive. The personnel do need to be taken care of. If you were to give us some insight into what your annual budget looks like, what does that actually entail? And with that, a follow-up to that is give us some context into how you're bringing in the resources to sustain.
Yeah. So currently our budget is just over $1 million. I always kind of laugh internally when I think about that, because thinking about $1 million prior to running an organization felt like such a big amount of money.
Right.
And now that I'm like sitting here looking at payroll and taxes and all the things, I'm like, oh, this is nothing.
It's nothing. Yeah.
And it can be gone in an instant.
Yeah.
So what I've done at Project Be Free is do a lot of grant writing. Yes, that's another hat I have now. And really I had to learn that kind of on the fly.
Yeah.
Because being a newer organization, it's a lot of like pitching or figuring out ways to pose like a process where you're going to create a belief system in somebody or an entity that your idea is a good idea. And when we did a proof of concept in a pilot here in Renton and there was some promising results, we thought about replicating that and how we could continue to diversify that in funding. So currently right now, our main funding is through RFPs or grant writing. I would say it's about 90% of how we maintain our budget or our services. Which doesn't mean that it's like smooth sailing.
Oh yeah, it's not.
I mean, oftentimes during like fiscal periods or hard, even when like the federal government froze funding, that really like, I'm not going to lie, I lost sleep over it.
Yeah.
Just because I feel so committed to keeping a service going. And I also think about my team members' families and how they're needing to continue to have wellness, whether that is financial as well. So it is very interesting to think about. I will say this year, We have diversified our portfolio through funding. Currently, we are an organization that is now certified to give continuing ed to counselors and continuing ed also to advocates throughout the state of Washington that can now get certified through us. So, it's interesting because I had to also come around to the idea of like selling knowledge.
Yeah. Earned revenue is important now. Yeah.
Yes. And thinking about what that means. And as we've been building out this newly launched training center, I get to see like my team in a very different light, and I get to see them also get nervous or want to be nurtured in something new, but also see how they're showing up for that. And I think a lot about capacity building is making sure that someone isn't stuck in doing the mundane thing over and over again.
Sure.
And how they can apply their strengths and their knowledge and their skill set. And that's truly also a big piece of why I think a lot of our staff have remained with us.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I actually, my day job is in a nonprofit, right? Overseeing development for this specific organization. And so I know firsthand why it's really important to diversify, especially given our current landscape that we're operating in. If you were to share some challenges that you run into, yes, of course, there's you have to pitch a lot of folks. You have to, learn how to grant write. You have to be this person who's outgoing and out there really sharing about the impact of the work. How are you all navigating some of the things that are external that are beyond your control, right? Let's say, funding instability is one that's currently affecting a lot of organizations here in Washington, right? Where nonprofits are continuing the work because the work is important. However, there are things happening beyond their control that they can do nothing about. How are you going about that?
Yeah. I will say, first, definitely challenging my internal voice and narrative about silencing it or telling it to shut up in moments where I'm going out and asking. I mean, when we think about doing an ask for funding on a one-to-one, sometimes that can feel very shameful or like you're not successful in an area. And I had to flip that kind of on its head when I was advocating for an organization and a team to ask for funding, because in many of the instances when we have a gap in funding or funding has gone away, it's not because we're not doing good work. It's because funding is tied up in other areas or, has dried up, etc. Unfortunately, in the state of Washington, domestic violence specific funding since 2018 has been cut by over 50%. And, unfortunately, domestic violence isn't going down in many of our cities. So it has been a hard time. And through that experience, I have challenged my voice to really increase and to pitch not only community members, but cities, and really be transparent with them at the end of the day. Those are things that I'm trying to lean into. And I will say, perhaps a little selfishly, is some of this wellness fund is for my own wellness.
Absolutely.
To be able to sit with team and to ground myself and know that there are lots of hills that are ahead of me.
Yeah.
But I show up for this work very fiercely and know that we can be a successful team. One of the things that is really beautiful, I will say, is that there is oftentimes a shock in the community when they're like, oh, you're only 6 years old and you've done all of this.
Yeah.
Or, oh, how do you put together such a strong team that is now doing such intentional work at a high rate? And we're not a huge organization by any means. I will say our team last year was able to support community in over 1,800 domestic violence calls.
Wow.
So it's quite an experience. But I'm just so happy that the team entrusts me to continue leading them, and they're entrusting me to also fill some of those funding gaps and just entrust me with their lives, essentially.
Katya, you're like literally one of my favorite kind of people. You kind of remind me, not kind of, in every way. You remind me of like the phrase, easy never changed the world. It's one of my favorite phrases. I have it written on my wall because it's a reminder that the work that we do might be hard, but it's worth it. And I'm inspired by you. Let me start there. What I want to ask though is, I love passion. I love I want to know the reason why you do what you do, because there's something that wakes you up every day. There's something that you can't do the work that you're doing without it. And I thank you for that work. I know we're all grateful for it in this room. And then also, what does Project Be Free look like in 5 years? What is the big vision, 5 to 10 years even? Like, what is that thing that you're aiming for? Is it, taking it all over, the U.S.? Is it like, what does that expansion look like?
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for also all of the feedback. I will say a lot of what contributed to me showing up is that I'm a survivor myself. I think you have to be aware of the experience and know that you have an opportunity to speak to something that maybe might not have words for someone that hasn't. When I was in my master's program in counseling, I very certainly thought that I was going to be a school counselor. And then I went through my own domestic violence story. And at the time, I knew that I had to take a pause for my own wellness. And I thankfully had that opportunity. But then I was also able to pivot and think about, now that I had been shown this experience, there was no way to turn away from it. And it was important for me to also vessel something that is so common, unfortunately. I think that, the media has shown us that oftentimes domestic violence looks like battered and bruising and, all of the terrible things. But domestic violence can also look like power and control. It can look like financial abuse. It can look like verbal abuse, psychological abuse. And a lot of those things can't be detected as easily. Unless you were someone that has navigated all of that. So I thought it was important to bring a voice to that. And the other thing I would say that really contributed to this experience is, in speaking with my then partner in working in law enforcement, he spoke about how domestic violence calls were so challenging, oftentimes triggering officers, their own internal stories. And then I thought about how oftentimes they don't have the opportunity to say, no, I can't show up to this, or no, it's a hard time for me too. So I really thought about how we could create something that serves all humans, no matter their walk of life or experience. Because if we are to change and redirect ourselves or others in this complicated scenario, we need all diversity at the table.
With that foundational experience, right, there's something different about lived experience, because you just show up from a place that's personal to you in what you're doing. As you're looking ahead, where do you see you all going?
If you were to ask me now versus an hour, that answer might change.
Yeah.
Something that I learned in real time with domestic violence work is that in 1 minute, you can be in one mood and things are going a certain way. And in 20 minutes or less, it can be a completely different direction. I will say, I don't know what we look to or what I'm trying to create in year 5. I can say very firmly that in this quarter, we're trying to expand and be very intentional about that. I think other things that are really important to me is that I don't want to just think prematurely or just build a program for just any city and there isn't intentionality behind it. So something that I believe very firmly is, for instance, when we think about partnering with a new city, is we're only going to partner with one new city a month. Now that might be frowned upon business-wise, but I think that's a big piece of how we build that rapport in that community, how we're very intentional about the community's heartbeat, their needs, their desires, what culturally is there, what is necessary. And even though domestic violence is complex, there are various cities that look different in what their needs are. So I will say in year 5 from now, where do I see ourselves? Still existing.
Come on.
And hopefully with a doctorate. I'm
Come on.
currently in school.
Okay.
And for my team, a team that's well.
Come on.
I was curious, is domestic violence going up or down in Washington State? And then also, is there anything unique about Washington when it comes to DV?
It has, by studies, gone down. I will say it's hard to really know if that's true.
Yeah.
And the reason of that is because, as we know, culturally, religion-wise, so many instances don't get reported.
Absolutely.
Right? So would I love to say that one day I won't have a job in this field? Of course. Do I think that that is something that will happen? Perhaps. But I do think that's why it's so important for not only people that are doing the work, but community members to know that there is an organization that does work, so then we can hopefully prevent future instances. I will say, unfortunately, if we've looked at the media lately, a lot of domestic violence instances recently have been highly volatile to the point of people losing their lives. And, I don't really know why that is at this time. I know, unfortunately, people have access to means, and by means, I don't mean just guns. People have access to things like knives every day. And unfortunately, when we are dysregulated or not maintaining our own wellness or our own spaces, we tend to harm others.
Yeah. No, thank you for the work that you're doing. You all are doing incredible work. I know that every one of us can say, in some capacity, we see the impact of your work in the community. And so thank you for all that you do. How can people find you guys? And how can they support the work that you're doing, especially this Wellness Fund?
Yeah. So I will say no gift is too small or big. We're an organization that is really scrappy. So if you have a couple dollars to give, that would be lovely. The nice thing about funds that are not restricted or not grant-based is that as an organization, we have an opportunity to be creative about how we show up for individuals. As mentioned, domestic violence is complex, and a solution to someone's story or experience isn't going to be tightly wound into a box. And that's why it is important to have unrestricted funding or donations.
Yeah.
In order to find us, we are on social media. We're on Facebook as well as LinkedIn, and then we are also on Instagram as well. And I would just encourage, if there is curiosity in the audience, if there is curiosity to know about what we do or how we do it, we are very available. I think that's one thing that I'm very proud of, is that through this funding scarcity, a lot of organizations have gone a little bit more dormant. And something that I hold very proudly is when people call us, they get a live person and they're not waitlisted. And that's something that I know that we have to protect immensely, because somebody might have a very small window to make a call to maintain their safety. And in order to do that, that's also making sure our team is well. We also do have a yearly survivor symposium, which the community is able to come and have a day of wellness. That is for youth, that's for adults. And we have childcare, we have lunch, we have all the things. And we just ask community to come in and be with us. So that happens on August 15th in Kent. And if people are wanting to engage, maybe be a facilitator, if they have a skill or a trade that they would like to speak to survivors about, we welcome that. You can reach out to us on our website. And then our last kind of pitch, or my last pitch, I would say, is that in October, for Domestic Violence Awareness Month, we do have a yearly gala. I will not take ownership of the event because I have somebody else lovely that will do that while I continue the work. So our gala will be at the Kent Showware, and it is on 10/10. And people are welcome to come celebrate with us. More than anything, I think that's the thing, is that we mourn with our community, we hold our community, and we want to celebrate.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Katya. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
having me.
All right, folks. If you would like to see Project Be Free walk away with the grand prize, we'll share some additional details with you about how to vote toward the end. In the meantime, stay tuned. Welcome back to Open Invite. You just heard from Project Be Free. And now we're going to break that pitch down a little bit more and talk through any of our reflections and all that wonderful stuff. So what do you guys think? How did Katya do?
I have no notes, man. Remember hearing about her business, first. I was very confused because it sounded like a whole lot of stuff I've never heard before, because I've never heard anybody having a nonprofit in this kind of way. And I didn't know you could even do that. It was just one of those things, you're partnering with the police department. I'm like, this is like, yeah, my heart, I was very emotional throughout the whole thing. It was very heavy. But just to see her passion and where it's coming from, it's a real place. And she's just the perfect person for this work. Yeah.
Agreed. I think she's the perfect person for the work, and I admire her a lot to be able to stand in this work, because if you pay attention, you can notice there's just a weight that comes with it, a weight that comes with the topic, a weight that comes with the work. She's keenly aware of that, and she is proactive about taking care of herself and some of those things. But she also acknowledges, like, this is just one of those lines of work that it just comes with the territory. So I can take care of myself all I want, but my mood can get shifted in 1 hour when I get this crazy call about someone experiencing things. So there is an absolute necessity for what she does in the community. And even though all of us as individuals aren't always directly tied to DV, I like what she said about us being aware about resources, because someone in our network is probably experiencing it right now and we don't even know. But if we did know, we at least have the opportunity to point them to Katya and what she's doing in the community. But she's just a founder with a plan. So there's so many things I admire about her, but she has a plan for what she wants to do, where she's going. We've partnered with her before with diversity networking. So she was a panelist on our panel discussion that we had at our annual networking event. So I admire the work she does, and I'm trying to find more ways to continue to get the word out there to provide that resource for community. Like, everybody in Washington should know about this. Then eventually everybody then we can start going state to state, right? So like she said, like, she's like, man, 5 years, I don't know where we'll be. I hope we're still in the work. I hope DV goes down enough where we don't even have to be in the work. But nonetheless, just more people need to know and be aware about what she does for the community.
No, that's good. And I have a question for you guys, because I think that it's one thing to sing the praises of a founder or a leader who is doing incredible work. When I think about the nature of what Project Be Free is doing, it's absolutely necessary work. My question is this work that can be replicated? Let's say that I'm an organization somewhere in a different state, and I see the impact of what this organization is, the impact of this organization in Washington State. Is this a model that I can replicate within the context of my community? And if not, what are some areas where you feel like they can sharpen that up so that this is a replicatable model for other organizations beyond just Washington State, so they're not having to carry the work themselves, per se?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Okay, devil's advocate. I think that, yes, it is replicatable, but nobody's going to do it the way that she's doing it. There's a different, like, if there was somebody in another state who had her experiences or similar, maybe, and, the same passion and the same hustle and the same mind frame. But, yeah, I mean, like, a lot of things are duplicatable, but it's just the person who is duplicating it. Like, can you do it the way that they're doing it? You haven't walked in her shoes. And so it's kind of difficult to say. It could be the same on paper, but the actual, like, the way that she cares for her team, like, you can tell every time she talks about them, she gets emotional.
She does.
We saw those numbers, and we saw how much actually goes back to them, and how much she's sacrificing her own, wages for this cause. So, like, I don't know who's doing it out here like that. So
now, is that a pro or a con, right? And the reason I asked that question is because this is necessary work, right? All of our lived experiences are completely different. And sometimes we carry certain giftings that feel so unique to us. But what does it look like for instance, they have this training model, right? Where this is a earned revenue source for their organization, which is great. In that, they're training other people to be responders as well, and giving them context and insight and things that they need to see or understand pertaining to how to mitigate these situations. So is it a pro or a con when you carry such a deep connection to the work when other people might not necessarily carry it like you do, but you want to teach them because ultimately the goal is to serve the community?
I personally think that's only a question she can answer.
Yeah.
Because I think the way it's showing up right now in her work, we could see it as a pro.
Yeah.
But it could be personally damaging her, for lack of a better way to say it, doing the work too. But we also know certain type of work is sacrificial.
It is.
And that's a reality to it, right? And I think this is one of those lines of work that do come with very real sacrifices. I mean, the fact 24-hour line, 24-hour availability, that's a huge sacrifice. And her being the leader of the organization means that she very well may be on 24/7 hours a day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
You know, so I think it's a great question, but it's hard to answer for her, right? But the way she's moving, it's making sense for her right now. Now, sustainability, right? You talked about duplicatable. I'm really glad she hit on it because she talked about exactly where the funds will be going so directly. It made it very clear for us to understand, like, I have a plan for this, and this is actually going back to my team and my organization for us to be able to invest in ourselves and sustain the work that we're doing because it comes with a weight. So I think about duplicatable. I think right now she's actually building out the model of what it would look like. She said she's about 5-6 years in. She's reached, I want to say, 3 to 4 police departments with 2 more on the horizon. I think 3 with 2 more on the horizon. So she's growing and sustaining, but you can see that sustainability is top of mind for her. So I think she's building out the model to be duplicatable. Is it now? I don't know.
Yeah,
true.
So there's so many variables with this work. Very complicated. Yeah, very layered.
Very layered.
Yeah.
I had to ask the question though.
Great question.
Yeah.
Great
I think
question.
it's a pro, honestly. I think because of the fact that somebody has to do it.
Somebody has to do it.
And thank God it's in our state, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, also the purpose, like the inspirational aspect of it, I'm like, you can see this from Kansas and see with the work that she's doing. You might not have walked in a woman's shoes, but you're like, I want to do something like that. So I'm like, I really love when people have a passion for what they're doing, and that passion is not duplicatable, but the work might be.
The work might be. Yeah.
I think it's a necessity for her to be able to show up the way that she's showing up. I think there's just a weight that comes with it, and it's necessary.
It's necessary. Necessary work. Okay. I hear you guys.
Wait, what do you think? What do you think?
Yeah.
I mean, listen. Listen, okay? Do we have time? I'm playing. No, on a serious note, I really do love the work that they're doing. I think that this is necessary work, and when I see an organization that is building beyond their own, I don't want to say their own motivations, but that's the word that's coming to mind, right? Because they're thinking about the broader community. I know that she shared about how they're listening in and getting feedback from the community as well. That's really important, at least to me, within the context of service work. You want to be able to hear directly from the communities who are affected to be able to support them well, right? And because that's plugged into their model, I love that, right? I do think it's duplicatable. I do think that it's also a unique thing to carry as well, because our own lived experiences are personal to us. So of course, I can't give you the passion that I have, but the passion that you have is unique to you. So how do you take what I give you as a tool and then multiply that within the context of your own world, right? And so this is definitely something that I think is not only serving community now, but will continue to serve community beyond that. And like she even shared, right? The hope is that we don't have to deal with DV. The reality is that DV is going to be a thing that we have to deal with forever,
Mhm.
Yeah.
right? And so for organizations like Project Be Free to actually exist, I think is wonderful. And I'll tell y'all, because I'm a nonprofit. So I pulled up their 990, I looked at their numbers and all of the things, and really truly there's a transparency that she shared that I saw reflected even within those specific numbers, right? Which I think is great. And I think that it speaks to, again, the integrity of the work and the intentionality behind the work. So, those are my thoughts. I think that it's wonderful. And if I was voting, I would vote for them.
Yeah, and I think she has the opportunity, just to add this in there, I think she has
Yeah.
the opportunity to build something that precedes her.
Mm.
And maybe one day she'll be able to take somewhat of a step back from the work while
That's
the
the hope,
machine
right?
still does the work, and I pray that she could reach that point because that would be special.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
I was going to say
Sure.
something really corny. I was like, Katya.
All right. You guys have anything else to say?
Nope.
I'm good over here.
Okay. Well, there you have it, folks. You heard her pitch and you heard our discussion, and now it is your turn. So head over to imgmedianetwork.com to cast your vote for Project Be Free if you would like for them to walk away with the $5,000. And I will note, voting closes after 7 days of this episode airing, so get to it. With that said, we look forward to seeing you next time, and take care.